I want to call to the stage somebody that you probably all know from our industry, Warren Boyd. He's a geologist, and as a geologist, now he's on marketing, and he's director of marketing of Potentate Mining. That is the owner of the Rock Creek mine in Montana, producing and promoting Montana sapphires, and that will be the topic of his talk today. So, ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause, Warren Boyd. The stage is yours.
My, that's a humbling experience to follow that inspirational thing Mama Mimo, and Evan and Damon have been working on. It's a pleasure to be here and to make my presentation, which I'm sure you'll find is a different part of the world. And I guess I have to look behind me to see what's happening. But first of all, okay, that's what I'm looking at. Great. First of all, I'd like to express my appreciation to the DMCC for hosting ICA. And as the vice president, who's about to no longer be vice president, I have genuinely enjoyed my time with the ICA as either a director or the VP. So if we could cue the talk, I'll start. Oh, I have to push this, do I? Got it. Okay, well, the theme of our conference is the future of colored gemstones. So I decided that the best thing for me to talk about here was the future of North American sapphires, because that's my area and my area of mandate. And I'm sure I don't need to remind many of our well-educated and knowledgeable delegates here that the Western Hemisphere is not really known for commercial sources of sapphires or rubies. When we think of sapphires, we normally think of Asia, Africa, Sri Lanka, Australia, China, and Madagascar. There are a number of known occurrences of sapphires in South America, but none are producing commercially or are unlikely to. Oh, what happened there? I guess this is timing. Anyway, forgive me, I'm still getting the glitches out of the way here. And with the exception of Montana, none are producing commercially by any volume. I'll focus on the potential commercial localities in North America. We all know about Greenland ruby, and to use Vim's comment the other day, let's see what the word was. Geology does not know boundaries. And I'm going to touch briefly on a few locations. We all know about Greenland ruby, and because of the Greenland ruby occurrences, this is going faster. I think it's gone on some sort of timing that I wasn't accustomed to the glitch on. But the geology across from Greenland to North America and Canada is really not a lot different. So that generated prospectors looking for sapphires in eastern Canada. So we know about the Greenland ruby, but it also generated these discoveries that I'm going to touch on briefly. First, Greenland ruby. The geology is in high-grade metamorphic rocks, and we all know what production is coming from there. I won't go into it further. Unfortunately, Haley's not here to give a talk, but I will touch briefly on these occurrences in Baffin Island. They produce some beautiful little gems, but it's a very tough area to work. It's remote. All the sapphires occur in hard rock, so it's hard rock mining. I've been on the site up there. It's polar bear country. You don't particularly want to be sitting in a tent. In fact, Brad Wilson from Alpine Gems in the past had to face a polar bear in his tent. And so I don't see there'll be much indication of any large-scale production from Baffin Island, but there will be some artisanal work over the coming years. And if you wanted to buy a Canadian sapphire from Baffin Island, it's almost impossible to get. The next location is Labrador. I have actually looked at some of the sapphires coming from there. I would say the best quality of the stones there look like probably the nominal quality coming out of Greenland. They're sort of a lavender color. and some pink, some grays, but opaque. No fine gems have been recovered yet, but the discoveries there were, well, you can see they're going in rough country in canoes with lots of black flies, mosquitoes, and bears. I don't see any potential for any commercial production in the foreseeable future unless something spectacular is found. The other area I'll talk on is the area of British Columbia. And British Columbia in the Revelstoke area has produced some beautiful star sapphires and some very large handheld specimens of corundum. But it's in a hard rock environment in a mountainous area. And I think there will be some mineral specimens coming out of there, but not likely to be a commercial producer of sapphires. Another area I'm going to touch on is in Wyoming. There's some small ruby occurrences, and the reason I mention this is Columbia Gem House in North America is actually selling some rubies from this locality, but they're mostly opaque, fairly heavily included and small, so I don't see any major commercial production coming from the area. Now, we've touched on the Greenland rubies, the Labrador sapphires, the Baffin Island sapphires, the BC sapphires, and the Wyoming rubies. Now I'm going to talk about Montana, and I made that big for a reason. The Sapphire Mountain Range in Montana is where our Rock Creek sapphire deposit occurs. But before we go into that, I'll put you into perspective of what Montana is like. Montana is fairly remote. It has the population of the United States is 326 million, but the population of Montana is only about 1.1 million, but there are 2.2 million cows. So you're much more likely to see a cow or cattle in Montana than you are to see people. Phillipsburg, the town near where our mining operation is, only has a permanent population of 820 people. It has one gas station, one bank, one hospital, and it's a very seasonal area where a lot of tourists come in the summer. The plates in Montana state the Treasure State, and the Treasure State comes from the gold sapphires that occur in the state. This is Montana. As you can see, Montana is just south of the Canadian border in the northwest part of the United States, and it has 4 deposits that we're going to touch on briefly. First, the Yogo Gulch area in the northeast of this map area. Secondly, the Missouri River, including the Spokane Bar and Eldorado Bar deposits. Thirdly, the Dry Cottonwood Creek sapphire deposit in Montana. And the one that we're working on is the Rock Creek sapphire deposit. Yogo Gulch produces a deep blue or purple. It's an underground mining operation. Many of the stones don't need heat. They're a beautiful purple, purple or blue, a royal blue. It generally doesn't produce any large stones. And Dr. Jeff Post was kind enough to put a picture of a very fine Yogo sapphire brooch in his presentation the other day. So it does produce some beautiful stones, but the production is very small. And although there may be some new underground production, it's not producing at this stage. It has a high stripping ratio, which from a geologist's point of view means for every ton of rock you have to move it's about a 20 to 1 stripping ratio. So you have to move 20 tons of rock to get 1 ton of ore. And then we move on to Missouri River, which I've alluded to. This area produces quite a few sapphires. There are pastel, light color sapphires. They occur in alluvial benches and reworked gold dredging deposits along the Missouri River from the old-time river dredges. It's continuing to produce sapphires, and in light of a lot of the marketing and promotion that's been happening on Montana sapphires, they are also expanding their operations. The other one I touched on in the location map was the Dry Cottonwood Creek area. This is an alluvial gravel deposit that has not produced in over 20 years. All of the areas have been fully rehabilitated. I visited it last season, and it's not likely to go back into production again. And the final one I'm going to talk about is the Rock Creek sapphire deposit, which produces a wide range of colors. It occurs in a heavily weathered volcanic rocks and occurs in secondary concentrations in the gulches and in the creeks. We're owning over 3,000 acres of private property here, and it's been in significant production since 2016, again, due to the efforts of Potentate. According to Dr. Richard Berg, who's the government geologist, in a publication he put out in 2014, he stated that from the time period of 1901 to 2014, approximately 65.8 tons of sapphire rough was mined from the Rock Creek area, which is about 59.6 thousand kilograms. And now compare that to Yogo Gulch deposit, which is in the northeast. That total production was only 3.5 tons since from its discovery to 2014. The Missouri River, also a regular producer, according to Berg, has produced approximately 3 tons up to 2014. These are tons of sapphire. Therefore, Rock Creek has represented in Montana about 91% of all the historical production of sapphires in the state of Montana up until 2014, according to the government geologist, Dr. Richard Berg. Now, I'll touch on Phillipsburg. Phillipsburg is a nice little community in Montana. As I mentioned earlier, it has a population of only about 820 permanent. In the summer, it swells to many guests. It's a popular tourist destination. It's a rehabilitated silver mining town. The ranch at Rock Creek was a local cabin down the valley from us. You can spend $2,000 to $3,000 a night to live in a tent-type cabin, or you can come and work at our mine and live a lot freer. And so the Rock Creek, the ranch at Rock Creek, and the brewery in the town of Phillipsburg are some of the largest employers in the county, in Granite County, which is the county we're in the state of Montana. And Potentate Mining, employing about between 15 and 20 people, is the third largest employer in Granite County. That shows you how significant we are. Rock Creek is a famous creek from North America because the fly fishermen come from across America to seek out Rock Creek for the very rare trout, and they love the fishing. So our property, and many our visitors who come to visit our property, we have a guide and we take them out fishing on our property, and every one of them comes back with a trout. You're supposed to release it, but well, why are we in the news? Well, since we started producing, we've produced some rather unusual and spectacular gems. This particular stone is named the Ponderosa Sapphire after the Ponderosa pines which grow on our property. This stone was 64.18 carats, and currently it's the largest recorded gem blue sapphire recovered in North America, and it was recovered from our property in 2018. It's currently in the collection of the Smithsonian. Rock Creek, it was discovered in 1892 when a prospector by the name of M.H. Bryan was looking for gold and found 130 years ago and found some shiny pebbles in the gravel which he saved for his grandchildren. Subsequently, jeweler Wayland identified those as sapphires. In the newspaper report, it states the sapphires were found in abundance. Within a decade, the stones were being featured at the Paris Exposition in 1902, and Tiffany was one of the first jewelers to feature Rock Creek sapphires. These are the old cabins from the workings of the American Gem Mining Syndicate between 1901 and 1935. We own this property. The rough sapphires that were mined at this time were shipped off to Switzerland, and the bulk of them were used in the watch movements. Remember, at this time, there was no heat treating technology, and the market was interested primarily in blue sapphires and rubies. And we produce teal sapphires and pink sapphires. So with the vicissitudes of the fashion industry at the time and the markets, there was very little interest in the pastel colors. Synthetics entered the market in the mid-1930s, and that pretty much killed the market for the natural sapphires and the jewel movements of the watches in Switzerland. Again, some pictures of the cabin showing deer, which are everywhere. We see the deer on a daily basis, moose every few days. And these cabins housed 50, 60 workers all across the property using hydraulic mining to recover the sapphires at that time. Hydraulic mining is banned these days in North America and many other places in the world because of the mess it makes. And so the remnants of the old workings can be found throughout our property. This is a ranch that we own on Rock Creek. We call it Sapphire Ranch for obvious reasons. And, but locally, the people refer to it as Gem Mountain or Rock Creek. Under where the cattle are grazing here, there's probably millions of carrots. We've been drilling off the meadows here over the last few years, and all of our holes are recovering sapphires. The summer tourist operation nearby attracts a big crowd of people where they bring their families and the kids pan the gravels for sapphires. And we help make sure that those tourist operations receive some sapphires. As I mentioned earlier, this is the same area where the 65.8 tons of sapphires were recovered. In the 1980s and 90s, the heat treating technology developed, and it suddenly improved the greenish colors of the bulk of the sapphires to beautiful hues of blues, yellows, pastels, and teals. Since the 1980s, there's only been sporadic small-scale mining, guys with bobcats and backhoes, and mining small volumes, so a tin can here, a tin can there would come out of sapphires. But until Potentate came along and acquired the project in 2014, or acquired the property in 2014. This is a topographic map of the area from Richard Berg. It shows the orange areas of the old gullies that were mined in the past. Historically, the hilltops were never mined or touched in the past because they were Forest Service land which you could not mine. The meadows, the yellow area there, is the flat floodplain of Rock Creek, which I alluded to earlier. We've drilled off, and there's a lot of sapphires in it. Now we're mining the hilltops and the hills between the gullies because we don't want to pollute the creeks with mud and dirt. This shows the property position. The yellow is 2,820 acres of private property. The green is 662 acres of private property on the meadows. You can still see the orange of the old workings in the background of that image. The purple is our neighbor who has been operating this and producing sapphires for 20 years from his little piece of property, feeding the tourist market. The geology, the bedrock is Eocene volcanic rocks. We're mining the surface debris flows and eluvium and alluvium that paints the hilltops and the gullies. The bedrock is deeply weathered, subtropical. Glaciation never touched this area, so the sapphires were preserved and not dispersed. There's variants of theories, but the theory is that most of the sapphires reach the surface through lamprophytic intrusives or alkali intrusives. And because the bedrock is deeply weathered, the mountain has been deflated and the sapphires are left sitting in the surface. We are the first ones in the history of production here where anybody has done any geophysics. We've done flow and geophysics on the surface, and it's defined a number of anomalies. We are focusing our drilling on the alluvials in the meadows area, and eventually we'll test some of these geophysical anomalies to see if they're pipes, dikes, or sills that carry the bedrock sapphires. But there's so many sapphires on the surface now that we don't need to mine underground. Here's our mining techniques. We just load everything into a truck like here, and the soils we mine anywhere from 2 to 15 feet deep, and we truck them to a processing plant or a screening plant. The screening plant screens out the oversized materials, anything over 25 millimeters. So if there's a sapphire in there larger than 25 millimeters, we probably will never see it. We also screen out the undersize, under 1/8 inch. So many of the smallest sapphires we don't recover at the early stage right now because of water issues. We save that undersize and stockpile it because much of it has gold in it, between $7 to $10 per bank cubic yard of gold. And then everything in between 1/8 inch and 25 inch, we call our gem ore, which we truck to the processing plant. This is the processing plant, and I won't show all the details of it, but we have 4 parallel jigs, which are density separate the sapphires and the heavy minerals, and that's the 4 parallel jigs. And then down on the bottom right, we have what's called a high G. It's a centrifugal concentrator that spins the slurry at high speed to recover the small sapphires, the tiny sapphires, and fine gold. And then it moves on to the water clarifier, which is in the background of this picture, which is about the size of 2 school buses stacked on top of one another. The mucky water goes in. We use flocculants to remove the clay, and then the balance of the water is sent into settling ponds. So it means that in our operation here, we recycle 80 to 90% of our water. This is a picture of the bottom of the jig bed with an American penny for scale, showing that after we turn the water off on those jigs and peel back the light material on the surface, we're left with a layer of sapphires and heavy minerals. And you can see quite a few sapphires showing in this image. The steel balls assist with separation of the heavy minerals, including the sapphires. And there's a scoop which is about six inches across, showing it's full of like 30–40% of that is sapphires. The old timers used to collect the sapphires with what they called coal shovels. They would shovel up the sapphires. There were so many. Then we use high-tech technology called shop vacs, and we suck up all the sapphires in shop vacs. And then you can see that when they peel back, that's just a few minutes picking from the jig. And then we take them back to the plant. We process them remove the magnetics with neodymium magnets, put them into the light tables, and pick the sapphires out of the concentrates. And I won't go through all the procedures here because of time, but this is an example of what the sapphires look before heat treatment and after heat treatment. About 80% of the sapphires improve in color. 8 to 10% of them don't require any heat treatment. We set those aside. We call them, in-house, we call them fancies. This is an example of the color ranges coming from the production, from colorless to teals to blues, oranges, and very rarely some pads. Another family picture of nice sapphires recovered from the operation. I'm just going to touch on a few of the really rare, spectacular stones we've recovered. That piece of rough is a 16.5 carat piece of rough. When I saw it, I nearly fell off my chair. I thought, looks like we got a ruby. It was a beautiful, deep cranberry red piece of rough. When we cut it, unfortunately or fortunately, it turned into an intense purplish pink. And Aaron Polke talked earlier about the traceability and origin certificates. We did a traceability and origin certificate on this. It's a certified 5.1 carat, purplish pink, no heat, loop clean. And engraved with a number on the girdle, by the way. Similarly, this was recovered in this 2021 season. It won an American Gem Trade Association Spectrum Award in 2022. This was a 67.2 carat piece of rough, which when I first saw it, I couldn't believe it was a sapphire because it didn't have its crystal structure, and immediately put it to my lips. Using my high-tech knowledge of gemology, I determined that it was not glass. And similarly, this also won an American Gem Trade Association Spectrum Award in 2022. This is a 7.79 carat no heat, and again, it has a GIA traceability and origin certificate. Hopefully the pictures that GIA took will be published sometime in the near future. Again, one of the stones in the 2021 season. You can see on the top left, many of the sapphires have a silky core down the C-axis. This particular stone we heat treated in order to remove that silky core, and we have a 586 heat treated, again with a GIA traceability and origin certificate stating heated, and we're one of the few people in the world that I think that can put GPS coordinates on particular stones where we recovered them. I'm going to move quickly because of time. This is a carat 48 no heat, a carat 25 heated, carat 65 no heat, a beautiful aqua blue, carat 21 no heat on the right, an unusual green sapphires, carat 06, and on the right a carat 31. We get some pinks and pods, 89 points carat. Orange, carat 22 no heat. On the right, 95 point no heat. Just a few other stones in the unusual colors, 94 point no heat. On the right, a carat 14 no heat. Many of our stones produce a party color. The local community has been referring to them as pinto sapphires in honor of the horses, which are horses with patchy colors called pinto. So we sell a lot of pinto sapphires in the rough, and our clients who cut the stones cut a lot of pinto sapphires. Just some acknowledgments. A lot of the photography for the gemstones was done by Jeff Hateman on the top right. That's me holding a gold bar on the top left. I love the sapphires, but the gold pays the fuel bills. And bottom right is Andrea Ray, our office manager. She's our mother hen who protects our sapphires at the mine site. And her husband, John Ray, is our mine manager. And he's had many years' experience in alluvial diamond and gold mining. And sapphire mining is no different than gold placer mining. And of course, this operation is owned and financed by Dr. Keith Barron. He's a visionary exploration geologist that discovered a major gold deposit in Ecuador, and that's the Ecuadorian connection to Montana sapphires. Because he made so much money on that discovery, it's been financing our operations. So we have a privately owned, well-funded and debt-free sapphire mining operation. I'm sure there may be some questions. Thank you.
Well, Warren, you kept it on time. Thank you very much. Sorry about my very sexy voice this morning. I think I got some wind in the boat. We still have 2 minutes for questions. Okay.
Yes.
A microphone, please. We need microphone because people at home want to listen to the question. Thank you very much.
Recently at the AGTA show, the Pinto Sapphire was named Disco Sapphire. Is it the same thing?
The what? I'm sorry.
A Disco Sapphire.
Disco.
Yeah, somebody has named it as Disco Sapphire, and I saw it in the AGT. Yeah,
If it sells, I'll name it a disco sapphire.
right, it's nice.
Yeah. I hadn't heard that term. Thank you for letting me know.
A lovely piece.
Yeah.
And they named it and it won an award also, I think, at the AGTA, a Disco Sapphire.
I don't think I don't think it came from Rock Creek because I would have heard about it. Right. Normally people phone me when they win an award.
I know what a disco boat is, not a disco sapphire.
Yeah.
So, no more questions. Thank you very much indeed.
Doug has a question?
Oh, Doug, come on. We have to stick on time.
We
Really?
got 1:40.
No, we have only 1 minute 37. Microphone. Thank you. 1 minute 30.
Does anyone in here watch Yellowstone? The movie? I have never seen product placement like they've done in Yellowstone. I'm just curious, has there been any discussions about Montana sapphire in Yellowstone?
Well, I can tell you that the big yellow, the 67 karat yellow, when we recovered it, we called it Yellowstone. Yeah. Wow. And which sounds rather simplistic, but it was in honor of that series. Subsequently, the owner has renamed the stone, and I can't off the top of my head recall it, but it was Champagne something or another. And it's somewhere in the Rainbow collection.
Cool.
Yeah. Very good question, actually. Thank you very much. No more questions. So thank you so much for your talk. Thank you very much indeed, Warren. Thank you.